call a meeting to order. And the first order of business is the approval of the minutes from February 28th. Do I hear a motion to approve and waive? Let me first ask, anybody have additions or corrections? Seeing none. Do I hear a motion to approve and waive the reading? Mimi motions.
I second.
Who wants to second that?
Sarah.
Thank you,
Oh,
Sarah.
sorry.
Thank you. All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, the first order of business on the agenda is case 20-23, 2023-02. And my understanding is that the petitioner has asked for a continuation until our next meeting. We must vote on whether or not to grant him a continuation.
I make a motion to continue to April 28th.
And I'll second it.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. The next order of business is case 2023-3 at 305 Eastern Avenue, and the petitioner is 305 Eastern Avenue, LLC.
Hi, good evening. My name is Milad Farahani. Anthony Rossi is our attorney. He's just outside looking for parking. Should be in about 2-3 minutes. If we could wait for him, please.
How about an overview?
Sure, I could do that. So again, my name is Milad Farahani. The site is 305 Eastern Ave in Chelsea, in an industrial area with airport overlay district zoning. We like to use the front left side of the lot to just park vehicles. It's currently being used by an airport company that has been parking cars there for past, I think, 10, 11 years, but they never got a permit for it. So it's a special permit that we like to apply for. And here's Mr. Rossi, so I'll leave it up to him. No, I just started introducing the site. It's over here downstairs.
Sorry, I had to find parking. Anthony Rossi on behalf of the petitioner. As the plan shows, so the site is currently pretty much paved as you see it. It's being used in that manner, but from my understanding, the use, a portion of it really wasn't allowed. It's been like that for years. So what they're trying to do is they have 140 parking spaces on the site, and then if you look, if I may take this, there is an easement area which shows additional parking spaces on the easement area. And they also showed a trench, that drain that was done, that's not currently on the site. And I believe that's already gone through conservation. Is that right, John? The trench, to get that approved. And essentially it's for 140 designated spaces for airport parking spaces and also electric vehicles for said location. So it's essentially what's really there currently, but now really making it compliant, and also it also shows how it's going to be marked off, paved, striped, dealt with conservation, and also the existing tenant there has designated spots. I believe it's about 40. Just want to confirm 50 spaces for the existing building, where 44 is currently required for the existing building, and the existing building is still in place. Is that correct, John?
I'm sorry, you're saying there were only 30 available?
Excuse me?
How many were available for the existing building?
There's supposed to be 44 required for the existing building, and there's 50 designated for the existing
50.
building, part of this plan. So it's 6 more than what's actually required for the existing building. So the building would still be compliant. And that existing use is still in place. That's not being changed currently. It could change down the road based on a possible user or vendor. That's essentially the site, because the site pretty much is what it is. And only thing now would actually be more code compliant and building, zoning code compliant, and will now have designated lanes to drive, go back and forth, and parking and storage and electrical vehicle storage also. And I can certainly address any questions that this board may have. And I apologize for my tiredness, but I thought it was second on the agenda and I couldn't find a parking spot.
So to be clear, you don't propose demolishing the existing building there or renovating or using it in any way?
No, the building will stay, and they will be, if they intend to try to keep the building, and they would probably renovate the exterior of the building based on the current user for a longer-term lease. And if not, another user will be coming in and they would do the building over. My clients are also the same developers who developed the Rivian site, that they built a new structure on that site.
Sorry, which site?
On the Rivian location where Griffin Way was. They built that new beautiful building there. It's just, my clients, the same developers that are acquiring this site. And they buy sites to redevelop and repurpose, and they keep them. They don't sell them. They're long-term landlords. And they would take this building and repurpose this building. And as far as aesthetics is concerned, yes, they would do it over.
Are any improvements being made to the drainage system?
I believe that's already, they did a trench system, and already everything drains, and that was already filed prior to my involvement, which is what I talked to John about, because it was brought up to conservation, and that was approved in conservation last month.
Yeah, on March 8th, the Conservation Commission approved this storage system for the water that's on. It's this right here, which required this revised plan because originally it showed 12 parking spaces there.
Can you tell me how many cars will go in and out at one time?
We don't currently have like an essential operator on it. We have people that we're talking to, but it's not something that's gonna be, if it happens, it'd be coming during early morning hours for, this way you see the park and rides essentially, and then they would come in the evening times if they're gonna pick them up, other than electric storage of vehicles. So we as far as trip counts, it's gonna be far less than what's taking place now.
So it's open 24 hours?
It'd be, well, we'd have to get a license to open 24 hours. It'd be more, if you ask me for the trips would be minimal comparable to what the size is, because it's not somebody that's going back and forth. It's people that leave in their cars, maybe going to a long weekend or storing the vehicles there, and then taking a shuttle service to the airport or what have not.
And I'm just asking, is it possible for the public to be able to charge their vehicles in that slot?
If there's EV station, it's a private property, so
Right.
most likely from acquiring the property and doing the renovations, it's probably gonna be one like vendor that would take it and then lease it to that site, and then someone could come there and I guess, I don't think they're gonna make it like an open EV charging station for the
Well, have
General-
they given it some thought in the future? Because
Yeah,
I know that electric.
absolutely. It'd
Because
really
it's
be
very
more-
hard to charge cars, so
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, I do believe, and I can't speak for Rivian, but I believe at their location, they do have electric charging stations. And I'm actually dealing with them for something else with John, and that's something I could actually talk to Rivian about too, on their other location, which is around the corner at Griffin Way, about having electric charging stations available
Okay.
to the public.
So I'm not entirely clear as to what it is you're proposing. I mean, on the one hand, a park and fly facility.
Yep.
And on the other hand, a storage lot.
Well, the park and fly essentially acts almost like a storage, because people leave them there for a day, 2 days, or for multiple days. So that's how the park and fly works. I only brought up the electric vehicles because that's one of the things we're looking at too, as far as electrical vehicles.
But it also sounds like, I mean, in addition to this, a storage of vehicles for hire or return from hire, so it will also be operating as a car rental operation?
I don't believe there's a car rental being proposed at that location.
The denial letter stated park and fly,
Yes,
and then also stated storage of vehicles for hire or return from hire.
yeah, I think that's, because I think my understanding when I spoke to Mike McAteer, the zoning enforcement officer of the city, is if you're having vehicles that are not park and fly, and whether it's electric storage, electric vehicles, transporting, that would fall into that category. But that's But I can ask Milan, but do you potential to have a rental? No, there's no rental, just storage and park and fly. So if that states that, we're not looking for use to have a rent, like an enterprise rent-a-car. That is not a use that's being intended there. And I just did affirm that.
Now, the applicant will be running this, or are you looking to lease it out to
So-
some other organization?
They would probably look for an operator and a vendor to take over the site and a portion of it. They would develop the site, they would acquire it, develop it, build it, same manner they've done in the past on other sites. And that's why I mentioned the previous site that they did where the Rivian building, the new structure was built in there, and they kept the site and repurpose it and redevelop it. Essentially what it is now, but a higher use, a better use, and zoning compliant, and also aesthetically far more pleasing than what's currently at the location.
How does this benefit the neighborhood, that area?
One, as far as the use is concerned, your limitation to what it is in that district. But if people are going to the airport, then they want to leave the vehicles and they can't park on the street overnight for a period of time, they can park their vehicles there, take a shuttle service, and go to the airport. And there's far less places that, because of the developments of 2 other park and fly sites in Everett that became large distribution sites in Everett, the park and fly has now been reduced incredibly. So now it gives another site for that to take place of uses that have been diminished due to redevelopments of the part of Chelsea. So as far as neighborhood, it actually addresses a need for people to park their vehicle, and there is a need because it's being done now, whether it's lawfully or not, it's been done for years at the location. And as far as the structure, it takes an eyesore structure that's gonna be redeveloped or repurposed with a higher valuation, and vehicles that are stored for a period of time that are registered there. The city would also receive excise taxes for all the vehicles that are gonna be registered at that location.
How is the structure going to be redeveloped? I mean, you said it's not going to be torn down.
It's not gonna be torn down. It's gonna be, basically, the structure's gonna be redone on the exterior based on what it is. They have to acquire the site. They don't currently own the site. And at that point, they would file for a building permit and redo the building on the outside and whatever is needed for a user on the inside. Everything takes place based on what the operator that comes in there wants and desires. But I can tell you for this developer, as an example, for something they did in Chelsea, they took an old rundown structure, I believe at one time was a gas station, and they made it into a luxury building where Rivian Company operates, employs residents in Chelsea, pays a higher tax base based on the structure and the improvements. So there's revenues that come in and take a blatant site and make it far better than what it is. And there is a shortage of park and fly now due to sites being taken over for other development.
Do you have a developer already lined up for this?
They have some, my client's the developer, so let's clarify that. My client's the actual developer.
Okay.
So
But then you have an operator
they have a
already lined up?
multiple potential operators and users for the location. But again, until you have the site approved for use and talk about how much money you're gonna spend to do it over, it's very difficult to do anything because you don't currently control the site subject to the approvals that is needed.
What is the duration of the lease to this? This is a tenant, correct? A tenant?
Yes.
Yeah, so how long are they looking at for a lease?
They're gonna be, they don't own the property yet. My client is trying to buy the property. It's subject to approvals. As far as the tenant that's there now, they're gonna work with that tenant there and potentially seeing other users for that building, but you're not there. It's hard to talk about something
For
until.
the use of the lot as a park and fly facility, what is the
Oh,
duration?
what would be the term? Most likely, usually around 10 years or 15 years with 5-year options because the amount of money it's gonna take to renovate and do it. It'd be more of it wouldn't be a short-term lease if that's what you're asking me. It'd be more of a longer-term lease.
Okay, thank you.
This is in the industrial zone. John, can you remind us what is allowed in the industrial zone?
It's actually Port District, which is a
Okay.
new district that was created under the waterfront plan, and it's also airport-related overlay districts. The uses actually come in under the airport-related overlay district, which is literally what it says, uses related to airport activity.
So this area is currently zoned for businesses that serve the airport, not for
As
residential, not for anything else?
in the overlaying district, in the underlying district, the Port District, it is zoned for uses relative to a waterfront
Uh-huh.
use.
Waterfront, okay. What falls under waterfront? Can you describe that a bit?
I don't have I'm sorry, I didn't bring my zoning book with me, so I don't have it
Sorry.
with me.
It would be things like
Loading.
Eastern Minerals,
Uh-huh.
the shipyard, water-dependent uses.
Okay.
you know.
So basically this, as it's currently zoned, it could not be residential?
Correct.
Okay.
Or restaurants, or, I mean,
I would love it to be residential and restaurants. It'd be far more valuable at that point, but no, it's not. This coincides to what's the zoning in that district is. It's only gonna be a higher-end product with a better developer that's gonna try to repurpose it and make it a better site in the future.
Can you talk to me a little bit, is there a lighting plan or cameras or security on this lot?
Yeah, there will be lighting on the property. There currently is lighting on the property, but there is one of the conditions, and it can be a condition for this board, that a lighting plan and a landscaping plan be submitted to John, and to be one of the special conditions, part of design review, and they expect that to happen. It would be more of configuration
Okay.
when someone comes on the site, if this is how they want the configuration to be, and then you designate lighting based on the configuration of the site.
Okay, thanks.
How about security? Like how often, will someone be there
Oh,
24
yeah, I mean,
hours a
when,
day
when,
monitoring?
when there's an operator for these type of facilities, it's gonna be a gated facility, because there's gonna be vehicles on it, fenced in, and
Okay,
so
but
forth.
will a human be on site?
Oh, yeah, most
at
likely,
all
yeah.
times?
With these type of sites, the parking flies, there's always somebody on site.
Okay.
I mean, that's just, it matters to the operator. I mean, if someone does a gated, with a wrought iron, nice
Yeah,
fence going.
Okay, I'm concerned about, if there were to be, if something were to happen and there's no one there to monitor. I didn't know,
Oh,
if
this,
there was gonna be
these,
someone.
most of these parking facilities, almost all of them that I've seen, all have surveillance. They have security, they have, like motions for people that are coming.
They're self-serve, is that what you're saying?
Most of them, but most of the times, if they're operating from 5 in the morning till 8 at evening, there's someone on site for that. So if you're asking me if someone's there at 1 in the morning, I can't, that I couldn't tell you. But it would be a well-lit site with video surveillance throughout.
is there a signage plan yet?
I don't believe there is, no. I don't believe there is. I think that's something that would have to be dealt with John in design review regarding any signage. And if there was a signage that doesn't meet the city's requirements, it'd have to come before this board and the ZBA to have the signage approved. That's not within the standards of the city. But they're not there yet for signage because they don't have an operator. So they couldn't really, until you know what's coming there, you wouldn't know what somebody wants.
Did you receive the report from the department that there needs to be a stop sign and a stop line added on the Eastern Ave?
Yeah, whatever they want there, we're gonna comply. That can be a condition.
Just so the board is aware, it's in the department report. On the Eastern Ave front, it's the intersection where the train is, so it's a pretty dangerous intersection. The stop line is before that exit. John, I don't know if you have a picture of it.
Yeah. If that's something that's on our property, we'll gladly comply with any condition that the city may have. If it's something that's not on our property, that would be something that the city would have jurisdiction on. And you wouldn't have an objection to that, right, Neil?
Is this open to the public for comment?
It is a site plan hearing, so yes, it is. I have questions. I don't want to interrupt the board.
Alan has a question.
How many vehicles of each kind will be parked there? How many electric vehicles, how many park and fly?
We don't have a designated number now because we don't have a user on site. There's no designated.
But your plan shows parking spaces.
It shows I believe
Right.
44 outside of the one that's not in the easement area.
Are they, is this for the off-airport parking? Is this for electric, or is that, or is it
I'll
not decided at this?
I'll be honest, John, I don't think they've decided because they don't have a vendor that's there who's gonna operate yet on it.
Then I would suggest that the board can't approve it unless they know how many of each that they're approving, because there's two different permits that have to be addressed.
You mean how many are gonna be electric vehicles and how many are
electric
gonna be?
vehicles, how many park and fly?
Can you use the microphone, please?
Actually, 100 and...
Please use the microphone because it's video
Sure.
recorded for the record.
I believe actually we wanted to do 120 parking for the electric vehicle parking, and then the rest would be for park and fly.
I'm sorry, how many for park and fly?
120 for the electric.
And
car
how many for
parking.
park and fly?
It'll be,
Will be the
it's
remainder.
actually it'd be the balance, so it's, I believe there's 144 spots, and then you have the additional spots in the easement area. So I didn't count the additional spots in the easement area, but I believe there's, well, actually, if I can go up to this plan. I believe it's 39
But
plus,
I thought that these were for the building.
no, I'm sorry, where, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the easement area, John, on this. Where's the easement area?
These are for the, so this is the area where we're gonna use for the electric parking,
Okay,
all right? And that's gonna be for the building. So this area here will be the...
yeah, but Rick told me, the engineer, that there's 144 spots, and then there's additional spots for, in the easement area that we have. So I'm trying to look and see if this is the last plan showing the easement area.
You know, I'm looking at a plan here that's slightly different, because those are angled parking spots.
Is
This
this-
looks like it's dated December 6th.
Yeah, the plan was updated because it was an easement area that they controlled. So I'm trying, actually, let me just read this right here, I apologize.
Well, this has 34 spots in the easement area.
Is
Is
it
it
the-
possible that I'm looking, is it possible that I'm looking at an old draft?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Oh,
Yes, yes,
okay,
because it
yeah.
was updated. So either way, I would state that out of the spots that are on here, 124 proposed for the electric vehicles and the remainder for park and fly, whatever the remainder number is that are on this plan.
But then how many spaces for employees?
For what?
For employees?
It could be any, I mean, for the building itself, the 51 spots are for those are for the building. These are the building spots for the building. These are not part of the electric. This is part of the building, the 50 spots here for the building, 44 required. These are for the electric vehicles, hypothetically speaking. So we can designate, I mean, I don't think anybody's gonna be looking to see if there's 2 employees. It's gonna be 1 or 2 employees at a time there, so it'd be one of the 124 spots they would park in there. But they have 51 designated spots for the structure that are not part of electric vehicles. Correct, Eli? Yes. For the building. And I believe the requirement was 44. I don't know if that,
I think the board really needs a number stated for the,
to designate, I get it, John, because you have to separate the two because one's for a certain use, one's for another use. So to clarify, the 51 are for the building, which are not part of electric, and 124 for the actual site.
120 for what?
124 for electric storage vehicles, electric vehicles, and then the 51 are for the actual office, for the existing building that's currently on site.
So, and then 51 for
And-
the building.
Yeah, and then the
And
remainder.
how many for the park and fly?
So the only thing I don't know, John, because Rick Salvo is a civil engineer, and he had to fly for a family event, so he's not here. It's the balance of the 144 and whatever is in the designated easement area. I just don't, I can't see it on this plan where the easement area is.
I'm guessing
I-
that the easement area is on the south side of that fence, because that's the difference between the two plans.
So if it's these vehicles here,
I think I would be more comfortable having this information, nailed down,
yeah,
before making any kind of decision.
we are, I hate to say it, because we're on massive time constraints, and we lost the ZBA hearing for the acquisition, because it's subject to it. And I'm comfortable saying 124 spots and leave it at that, and then
I'm not comfortable I personally am not comfortable making a decision with it being not documented,
I'm
honestly.
telling you, then we're gonna stick to that number then. That's the number we're gonna stick to. It's 124 spots for electric vehicles. That's it.
So is
But
it,
124 for electric vehicles.
Correct.
How many for park and fly?
20 parking spots for park and fly.
20.
20 parking spots for park and fly? So is it possible to include that in a condition as part of our approval? Because if we are concerned that things aren't accurate or they aren't sounding super confident in their answers, that kind of ensures that there's actually going to be 124 spots and 20 electric, or, yeah.
If the board is so moved to approve this, I definitely recommend that this be included in the decision. But the city is not recommending approval.
Can you,
Yes,
why isn't the city? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I just have a question. Maybe I'm just like I'm not able to wrap my head around like the actual function and business that will be occupying this space. So I know, is it going to be a car dealership or just storage of cars? You said it was private property, but it's going to be park and fly available to public customers. So if you could just describe like the business that will be taking over the spot,
Can I talk about
that'd be great.
the possible user that might be going there? Rivian, can I bring it up? So right now, they're talking to Rivian, who took the other site and redid that building there as a possible user on this site for Rivian electric vehicles. As a potential operator and also dealing with, electric vehicles for that, for people, for the general public, and also to take the existing structure too and renovating that structure in the same way they rebuild a new structure in there. And of course, anything they do for improvements, they would have to get a building permit for the actual structure itself. So they're looking to redevelop and be a user on this site with a presence.
So it's like a
To do what?
concierge service for Rivian people who own Rivian
The-
vehicles?
Yes, and also a presence of visibility to Rivian that's also currently in Chelsea, and for visibility for Rivian vehicles, people that want to drive Rivian vehicles or store it and come and look and even go to the airport and take an electric vehicle, charge the vehicles there, and also have their offices in the building there and doing additional renovations in that building to make that one of their headquarters.
So
That's not what's being asked.
What?
That's not what's being asked.
What's being asked?
What's being asked is storage of vehicles. There was no discussion about office use
I'm
or,
not, no, he's asking, he asked about the existing building, John. So I was talking about the existing building, that and who the potential tenant is that could possibly go there down the road with existing tenant is for them to renovate the building and also lease it as allowed use on it and renovate that building also.
So it's going to be similar services or additional services that they currently are operating?
Correct, because right now they're just a repair facility at their current location. They're not, so that's all that is there. It's services for repairs or have not, and they built a new structure for that. So that use isn't being proposed here at all.
So, just to clarify, there isn't an operator under contract. Rivian is a potential client. It could work out. It could fall through. There isn't anything official that they're gonna be taking over this site.
My client's purchasing this property on the condition of this type of use. correct? And he wouldn't be purchasing the position the same way, Griffin Way, if he didn't feel comfortable with this operator and limit it just for electric vehicles with 80% of the lot if he didn't feel comfortable that this operator wasn't coming at the location. He certainly can't sign a contract when he doesn't own the property, but if that's the case, he'd be risking everything because he's gonna be buying the property then, and he zoned it for this type of use, and there's no other vendor that's going out there for that type of use coming to Chelsea.
What I'm kind of afraid of is that if we approve this under the condition that there's 124 spots to charge electric vehicles, there isn't going to be an operator, and it's just going to kind of be an empty plot.
Well, my client is definitely not gonna buy this property and spend what he's spending and do it over and have an empty spot. And, I mean, I represented it, I didn't think I was allowed to represent who is potentially gonna come there. But Rivian is the tenant that we expect to go there, and they're not buying this to be an empty lot. And they would redevelop the site based on the use, but, I can't tell you anything more that that's a hindrance that he's paying now. And currently, let's just talk about what's there. It's essentially a very, very worse version of what we're proposing currently, and that tenant wants to stay there.
Yeah.
You know, that tenant doesn't want to go because they're operating in that manner. So we're not looking to go backwards here, we're looking to go forwards here.
Can you tell me the timetable you have in mind?
As possible.
Yeah, ready to go right away.
Yeah. 3 months, I think we're pretty ready to go.
I'm
Could you use
sorry.
it?
I'm sorry.
How long?
3 months is probably the time frame that we like to have to, finish the transaction that we've started with the owners of the property and bring in the potential tenant that we have. So Rivian currently has a building about a quarter of a mile away from this place. This works out for them because they need more storage. They like to stay in Chelsea, but they figured that the building that they currently have in Griffin Way, it's a smaller building. It does not support their usage for the cars that they carry. So they need a site that's close to their site that they could park cars. So this site strategically is extremely close. Had it been a little bit closer, they wouldn't even need a permit. They could just park cars because they're so that close. But if this gets approved, we're very close and confident that we can have Rivian and stay here, stay in Chelsea, and it will be a 10-year lease.
So, just to confirm, probably for like the third time, there's going to be 124 electric car parking spots, 20 airport park and ride parking spots, and all of those extra parking spots on the outside are for the structure, and that comes out to like 50-something. 51.
The site will be gated, it will be well lit. These are gonna be brand new cars that are gonna be parked there. They're not used cars, they're not junk cars, these are brand new cars that are $80 to $120,000 each one.
Are you going to replace the asphalt, the entire,
Anything that needs.
the lot is kind of shot?
They're a luxury brand, they want this site to look beautiful. Look what you're gonna do. You saw what they did that building and what they built, and you see the foundation. They're gonna make this site look beautiful. So whatever needs to be done, they're gonna do it.
Yeah, the site's currently pretty gross.
I agree.
So, yeah. So can we put potentially repaving the entire area as a condition to ensure that the area is actually improved? Is that appropriate, John?
Yes. Yes.
Can I ask, John, you said that the city currently is not recommending approval of this. Can you expand on that?
The city undertook a waterfront study that ultimately ended up with this area being rezoned. And the goals of that study were for job density, but I haven't been able to ask all my questions yet. And one of my questions is, how many employees do you expect to have on site?
Well, John, with the existing building, as you know, it's pretty large.
Now, just for the uses you propose.
Well, for that use, they're gonna bring,
That use is already there, so the employees are already there.
no, the use there, they don't have that many employees in that current building.
Please use the microphone for the record.
Oh, sorry. The use that's currently there, John, there isn't that many employees that currently operate that building with the current use. With Rivian there, they expect to use a bulk, that's why we designated more than the 44-minute required there. So they expect to have a use there that's gonna take the 40 spots and additional spots that's there to take that building and to operate within the allowed use in that area.
That doesn't answer the question.
I mean, I can't tell you, you asked me to be a Fortune 500 company and tell people how many people are gonna, I'm not gonna lie to this board. I'm not gonna start lying, I never did. I can only tell you that I'm not Rivian. I mean, they're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars to do this over, not so they can have 2 people living in a massive building. They're hoping is to bring their operations in that structure. But there's not gonna be employees sitting in a car, John, if that's what you're
Okay.
asking me.
There's a lot of confusion about what's going on here, because previously the statement was made that the Gliptall will stay there. But now we're talking about,
They may stay there for a portion of the building, John. My client doesn't own the building yet. So I didn't even know that we were even allowed to even mention who was gonna go in there, or it would have been a different conversation from the beginning.
okay, let's consider that the building may be occupied by more employees in the future. How many will the electric vehicle and the Park and Fly bring in? How many employees will that bring in?
Probably about, just the parking lot alone, John, probably about 5. But once we can get some income from the parking lot, that allows us to renovate the building.
We're accepting the building will have a certain
we'll
number, but
have-
I'm asking specifically just the parking portion of it.
Yeah.
He just answered, John.
How about
He had
5?
I know he answered.
5. He's not gonna lie. We're not gonna lie. It's
I'm
5.
not expecting that you're lying. I'm just expecting an answer to my question, not bringing in something else that is not
Yeah.
really relevant to the question I asked.
5 to that. Only things were brought
Okay.
up was they brought up the building and a user. They sort of go hand in hand because that's what potentially going there.
But not under this permit.
Not in this permit. no.
Well, no, yes and no, because under this permit, the use is allowed for what they want to do other than the storage of the vehicles. So if this operator does come in there, yes, they operate that building, they just don't need to go to this board for that, because their use is allowed inside the building. But what isn't allowed is the storage of the vehicles. That's why when I bring up Rivian, it's not Rivian just gonna just park cars there. They're taking possibly the whole building.
It depends on what use Rivian is going to use of that building, whether it's permitted there or not.
Correct.
Right.
And
But
that-
So that's
Stick to
a
5 for
simple-
the employees.
Five for
Five.
employees.
And
I don't mean
not
I'm
in
trying to
line
be
with our
difficult.
job density plans for that area.
Can I add something else? So, John, by doing this, you're actually solving another problem. Because if we don't get this, Rivian could leave Chelsea because they don't have enough parking to where they are right now.
Yeah.
So that would drive them out to go to a town that would give them parking to park. So I'm trying to make them stay
This-
in Griffin Way, because that site is small enough for them. It's been talks that this is too small. We need additional spaces. So this solves the problem of Rivian staying in Chelsea. And I think that's.
But when you approached the city for the Griffin Ave site, and the city helped you with the zoning revisions,
Correct.
and with the site plan, and with the special permits that were required, you indicated that that was enough.
And I believe that, but the company has grown since then, right? So they have more employees, they brought more employees, the company's bigger now, they want to stay here. We're not saying they're leaving, I'm saying they need
For
they need more.
124 vehicles.
Yes. Is that,
Yeah. Which is-
it could grow to be bigger.
Which are essentially just being stored there, not generating any. One of the standards for a special permit is what is the community economic or social need that's being addressed here, and it's not,
I got tons. Let me get to that. That I got a lot, because we're Rivian. This I know, because now I can talk about it. Rivian will have designated stations that are available to the public. I didn't think I could bring it up before, but now I can. They're gonna have designated areas to the public they can use for electric. That's one. Two, the site is gonna be far more improved than what currently is in there for the neighborhood. Aesthetically and value-wise, tax revenue to the city is gonna be astronomical when the site's fully developed, fully leased, because it goes by the value on the lease and so forth, under the tax law for the city with the state. So the city's gonna generate far more tax revenue. It's gonna be a site that's gonna be now with a building generating with more employees, even though you don't believe it now, but they need to go into this building also. So so that's something that we can't get one without the other. So as far as what's currently there now, yeah, I mean, they can keep it like this now, but if you look at the uses, John, until the zoning changes, there's really not much that can really go there, especially in today's age with banking and the current uses to get developed. At least now you have a potential, billion-dollar company that's gonna come in and invest millions of dollars, create jobs in Chelsea, not just the 5 that on site, but also there. But you're gonna have a far more better landscape site than currently is there, a paved site, a building that's in.
but the board doesn't know that, because the board doesn't have a landscaping plan, nor does it have a lighting plan, nor does it have a signage plan. So the board doesn't know that.
But I know, but that's why John, I can't do something until, that's why I made it a condition that you, as a planning director, would have to approve any condition on a landscaping plan that's acceptable to you, a lighting plan that's acceptable to you.
And I could see if this was not a site subject to a major site plan review, but it is subject to major site plan review, and those plans that are not included are parts of major site plan review. Landscaping, lighting, signage, repaving if necessary, all that stuff.
I mean, that's why I said that it could be a condition that you would have to approve the lighting, the landscaping plan, the detail of the landscaping plan, the site. I mean, that would all be done when the operator comes in there and see, is this how it's gonna be positioned? Is this how it's gonna be done? This is the lighting that's gonna be. This is the landscape that's gonna be. That can be, and I've stated it even before, that can be a condition subject to approval to review, because by the time it goes through your review, John, we're gonna have a tenant, hopefully, we expect Rivian, and they're gonna draft all that to give to you to sign off on.
And I would say that that is a board decision.
No, I've seen in the past, as far as landscaping, lighting, that was dealt on the,
When they were not site plan review plans.
correct. But in the existing site plan that's being proposed now, as far as that, this is something that's currently existing on the site as we see. It's just gonna be,
Without a permit, illegally, and they were cited by the building department
yes.
to vacate the site.
I think the reason why I can't speak with Richard Lentz is that they know that my clients are trying to acquire the property, and they know that that use, we're not gonna move forward with them as a tenant with that use. That's why they did not go forward to the board on that appeal. But I can't speak for them, but they do know there is a buyer coming in there for this.
I have a few other, if you don't mind, relevant to site plan. How are the vehicles getting on the site? Are they being driven by truck? Are they driven individually? And who's doing the driving, particularly the park and fly?
So it'll be in people that work for Rivian that were gonna be driving the cars. The car would get dropped off, and the cars would be dropped off at their main location in Griffin Way, and they'll be driven by employees. It won't be driven by public. Even for ride and fly, it would be somebody from, an outside company that's gonna drive their cars over there and get picked up. It will not be regular people driving in and
So
out.
if I want to go to the airport, I can just park there, get on the shuttle and fly off.
No, that's not the intention. So the
I
site
was
is
talking
being,
about park and fly. Park and fly, yes.
yes, yeah.
Park and fly, you come there, and there'll be an employee there for the park and fly. They park the vehicle, and then they would take a shuttle. It'd be a designated shuttle.
It's not overflow like the current owner was using it as overflow from a site in Winthrop.
No, John, as you can see by the amount of electric storage vehicles, that's not the intent.
No,
of
no.
the traffic.
The plans that were submitted were not very clear, and they are not complete. So I need to ask these questions because this has to be included in the decision.
John, I love you, I'm not trying to be combative. I'm saying, by telling and making a restriction of 124 electric vehicles, I think the intent here is that there's really gonna be this is not made to be an overflow park and fly facility. This is made to be a luxury, dealer, electric, non-carbon emission structure and building and user that's gonna keep these vehicles there to address needs for their operation. That's it.
But you said that there would be
24. 24. But no,
park and fly spaces.
Yeah, but you said you worried about overflow.
No, I asked you if the previous, the current owner of this, who was cited for a park and fly without a permit, was using it as an overflow from the Winthrop site. So that's what I was trying to get at. Is this going to be an overflow, or is it going to be the primary site?
For park and fly?
Yeah.
This is not an overflow. We don't own any other park and fly.
But the operator of a different site did.
Yes, yeah,
And-
but this is
But
not.
you have no intention of leasing this to an operator from a different site and using this as overflow?
No.
No, not at all.
Okay. In that case, when they were using it as an overflow, the vehicle owner was not parking in here.
Right.
The operator was parking it there.
Gotcha. No, we're not.
That's what I was trying to get at.
So I apologize. No, that's not the intention here. The intention is not to see what you currently see there now. The intention is to be almost, to make a nicer version of what they've already did on Griffin Way. That's the intention.
Okay, now I'm getting confused. With the parking, you're going to have a park and fly portion.
Yes,
Who will be operating that?
first of all, we're gonna get a user, but my client certainly, if he wanted to operate a park and fly when he owns dealerships himself, luxury car dealerships, he certainly can operate a 24 parking spot,
Okay.
park and fly.
It will be it will be 90% for Rivian. That's 124 spots will be for Rivian. So if there is gonna be park and fly, it will be limited.
It'd be a very small portion, 24 spots.
Okay.
Can you clarify why you're doing park and fly at all?
First of all, you have to do something that generates, under the zoning for airport,
Oh, okay, yep.
a need, so you have to have an intent to meet the requirement under the zoning.
And that's the
Park and
Park
fly
and
for the
fly.
airport.
Sleight of hand.
Yes.
John, I have a technical question about the permitting this as a use. Since this whole area along Chelsea Creek is going through a lot of re-envisioning right now, how long are we committed to allowing the storage of vehicles as a permitted use? By agreeing to this, what are we, are we gonna have cars parked along Chelsea Creek from here to eternity? Or can we put a provision that puts a date on this, that we can revisit this conversation, 10 years from now?
Answer your first question, how long would it be? If you decide to permit it without any conditions, it is long-term. As long
So that's a
as the
problem.
use is viable, they can do it. You can put a limit on it.
You can?
You can.
Okay, well, that's what I
On
would suggest.
Marginal Street, at one point, the rental of vehicles was given a 3-year, a special permit good for 3 years, and then it had to come back to the board after the end of those 3 years to revisit it.
Yeah, that's a little bit where my thinking is too, because, I'm thinking about the city and Green Root's vision for the Forbes site. I'm thinking about the needs of our residents right now, which is a housing crisis. I'm thinking about people getting displaced from Chelsea, and yeah, right now it's zoned for industrial use and airport use, but that doesn't really help Chelsea residents. That is what it's zoned for now, but 5 jobs and a bunch of parking spaces, I don't know if that's what the city needs, and that's my basic reservation. I know that, but I don't know exactly how this fits into the long-term plan for the city and the long-term vision for the creek. And I would love to hear from more folks, either from the audience or.
I think you guys are underestimating how hard it is gonna get it to charge a vehicle in Chelsea. And the fact that, first of all, I love these cars, just so you know. I'm very biased. It's not Tesla, a different guy, but that's nor here nor there. So I really want more chargers, and they're gonna open up charging stations in 5-10 years. It's gonna be, you know, charging stations are so much more easier to use than a gas station, so you could put a park there, you could do renovations and stuff. I think that this is I think it's not like I think you're underestimating how beautiful these cars are. These are incredibly handsome cars. People love cars. I'm not a big car person, but, so it's not like we're storing, you know, a Dodge Dart in there. I don't even know if they make Dodge Darts anymore. So I think the fact that the charging part is very important to me, because I think Chelsea will need it, and it's very hard to bring them in. It requires a lot of electrical and all.
But
So-
how is
But,
the public
like
gonna
200
be able to take
parking
advantage of that?
Yeah,
it's not
200
200.
parking spaces, and we're talking about Chelsea. The people in my neighborhood can't afford a $120,000 car.
Yeah, well, a Tesla one time was 100,000, now you can buy a Tesla for 30,000.
Can I also add
You're
something?
gonna see, just like it started off with a pickup truck, now they have an SUV, and then next thing you're gonna see is an economy EV vehicle, the same way Tesla started. So this is a pretty new company, and I can tell you right now, to have a company like Rivian as an anchor coming into one of the worst parts of Chelsea, if you look at the railroad tracks right there, the signals and over there, it's very difficult, even if there is a residential conversion down the road for this area, to see residential where that site is located. But I will tell you, to have them as a Fortune 100 company to come into the city with a higher end type of like vision, how they're looking at it, and they're eco-friendly, they're world-friendly. I mean, I have a Rivian, so I have 2 Rivians. So I believe in Rivian. I know what they're gonna do. I saw what they did at Griffin Way, and if you ever went by and looked at that building and what they've done, and I think that you're gonna go try to charge an electric vehicle in Chelsea. I welcome you to go find me.
I like Sarah's idea of putting a limit on
I
it.
guess I'm still confused. It's like, it seems like what is gonna be done on the site, like all the services that are gonna be provided aren't very transparent. I mean, it's a luxury company, obviously. It seems like it's gonna be more of a concierge company. It's not gonna be very open to the public. It seems to be open to Rivian customers and Rivian customers only. So if you're gonna have EV charging stations, and the park and fly, like who's gonna be able to access those services?
We can, and do you have an objection if I say we have 5 designated spots for EV charging stations to the public?
I don't see how that's gonna work with this.
Like,
security
I understand,
concern.
like,
I don't know how many you're gonna have that one. But can I add one thing to your point about development and where the site is? So if you guys have driven down Eastern Avenue, where the site is very industrial, dense. To the right of it, exact abutter to the right, you guys approved 128,000 of warehouse. Okay, that was just approved 3-4 months ago. So that's densely warehouse. To the left of the site, exactly abutter is the commuter rail. Train abuts the property. I don't see that, where this land is located, being ever apartments just because of where it's located. If there was a potential for apartment or residential, I'll be the first one to jump on it and come to the board and say, hey, I think it's a good idea to turn this into residential. But that street right now, it's heavily industrial. And I think Chelsea wants some industrial to stay along with the residential. I understand there are other parts that we could do residential, but this part of Chelsea, especially with what the board approved a few months ago, it's gonna be, tractor trailers going next to the site, in and out all day long. You cannot put a highly dense apartment here and have commuter rail exactly about it. So I don't see that happening.
Because one budding parcel is the railroad, and the other budding parcel is gonna be a massive warehouse trucking right next to it that just got approved, I think it was about 2 or 3 months ago, John,
Yeah.
so like,
could you just answer the question that I just asked?
yeah, it's gonna be more favorable to the working class people. Rivian is already doing stuff in that transparency. They lowered the price of the vehicles. They're already looking into having the same way Tesla
So is
did.
it gonna be open to the public or Rivian customers?
No, it's gonna be just for Rivian. to
Rivian's
help them.
Rivian's a tenant, so they.
So
we-
only for people who work at Rivian?
I don't know, what, I'm sorry,
Customers
what's
are
the,
Rivian.
I don't know what you mean for that, like, it's a private,
So if I have a
Tenant.
Tesla, I can't go and park my car and take advantage of
It's a
the,
and
private.
I mean, to go there and drive one of their vehicles, I don't know,
No,
I don't.
to use the charging station.
charging station?
Oh, do you mean designated charging stations? You could,
It's not in the plans now that for us to have the public charging stations.
So so which clientele is gonna be?
It doesn't matter for you.
Is gonna be able to
Okay,
take
one
advantage of the park and fly as well?
Just have 5 designated spots.
Yeah, we could talk about it. It's not in the plans now, but that's something we could add.
All right, you happy with that, John? Okay, so right now, until we deal with Rivian, we don't know how Rivian's gonna propose it. He does not wanna lose a tenant without talking to a potential tenant, and then we're back to square one again.
And then for the park and fly, who would take advantage of the park and fly?
It's open, that's open to the general public.
So I
Anybody.
can, I myself can just
Yes,
park my Camry there and,
It would be an attendant then that would take it from you, that would park it, but yes, you can drive it to park.
yes. Just
Yeah.
like a regular park and fly. No difference.
And I guess at the end of the day, we aren't approving Rivian as a tenant. We're just approving a place to charge your electric cars. And in the future, it could be a place to charge your Ford or your Tesla, because
Yeah, this is definitely not subject to saying that Rivian is the tenant there. There was asked that who is a potential tenant, and we just said who's the potential tenant that's going there. But again, you're sort of we're limiting what we think is gonna go there by telling you it's gonna be 124 out of the 144 spots that are not part of the building to be an electric use. So if we didn't believe that was the case, there's not too many facilities in the world that operate that type of use, other than our tenant.
Yeah, I agree, that totally makes sense. And I don't think it's fair to call a potential alternative like affordable housing or condos or a park, because this area clearly isn't zoned for it. So I'm personally not considering it. I don't know. Looking at the current property, it's awful. It's in awful shape, and I think this represents an opportunity to create something that's clean and industrial at the same time. Because I don't see anything else occurring right here in our foreseeable future.
John?
yes.
Did you have a question? Do we need to, does this need to be open for public comment?
The site plan is open to public comment.
Okay.
And John, did you have all your questions answered?
For the most part, yes.
And so the city does not recommend, given the answers that were given, what are the specific reasons that the city doesn't
The
recommend it?
specific reasons are the limited number of jobs available on the site. I don't see really a community need or a public need for it.
Mhm.
And there's just a lack of information on the site plan.
Okay, thank you.
We're working off limited information. You gotta understand, we've been presented an outdated floor plan. There's no images, we're getting a lot of confusing numbers here.
Can I add, we do have plans that we gave to John a few weeks ago, so you may have had an outdated plan for some reason, but John has.
This is the updated plan you gave me,
Different one.
and it was sent out electronically to all the board members.
Yes.
Do we have folks who want to comment? Sorry.
Good evening, Carl Allen. I'm the Economic Development Planner for the City of Chelsea. I'm very confused by this proposal. We are glad that Rivian is in the City of Chelsea. What we permitted was a repair facility for electric vehicles. They're now talking about storing new vehicles, which sounds like a car dealership to me. If their need actually is car storage, we'd be happy to work with them to try and figure out where in Chelsea that belongs. The current zoning does not allow storage of electric vehicles. They've added on a small number of park and fly spaces in order to qualify as an airport-related use. That seems to be an accessory use, not the primary use. We should be permitting the primary use. Park and fly is not something we're eager to encourage anywhere in Chelsea. We have way too much of it right now. We're working with the current owner, Interpark, of the Park and Fly at 111 to get them to remove the surface parking and consolidate it into a structured parking facility. Nothing says blight like lots of parked cars, and we're not eager for that to be the image that Chelsea Creek provides to the community. This, as John stated, this was recently rezoned. Our objectives, the two primary objectives of the community during that rezoning process were increased access to open space and density of jobs. This does not, as presented, appear to be an opportunity for increased job density. Were they to present a consolidated plan that included some kind of expansion into the building that provided jobs and jobs that were appropriate for residents of Chelsea, that would be a different matter, but that is not the application that is in front of you. We would be happy to work with Rivian and would look forward to that opportunity, but this does not seem to be the vehicle to do that. So I would urge you at this point to not approve a recommendation for the proposal that's in front of you. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address this petition? It seems to me that there is a sufficient amount of confusion and lack of detail in the proposal, and this is just my opinion, not the board's, that it almost suggests starting over with a little more coordination between the city and whoever the other players are. If you have a proposed future tenant or whatever. I sit here, it seems incomplete. There are a lot of questions that don't seem to have really good answers. And it has the impression of being something that was put through at too much speed. Just my opinion.
I understand. And listen, I respect this board, and the board wants to refuse, and not recommend it. We're in a tough timeline, so, and if my client doesn't acquire it, and hopefully 4 or 5 years down the road, this use can be something different. But I think what was approved next to it's probably gonna hinder any decent use for the next 20 years when they build the big, massive warehouse for trucking. And then the other bookend of it is your railroad. We love to have residential there. I don't think anybody's ever gonna build residential there, whether you zone it or not. because of what's currently being done on the site that's adjoining to it and what it abuts. But the reality is there's a short timeline for anything we're trying to do, especially in today's world, because if that doesn't happen, then people look elsewhere. And my client couldn't acquire this property without having, especially in this condition and what's there now, and improve it without having an operator that can make sense of it. And this could be something that, it sits there for 20 years in the same manner, and in 20 years it could be a different world. But knowing what's now gonna be built beside it, and you're gonna have trucks going in and out daily, and where you're located on the other end of it, I don't know what more of a use you can really put there other than what is a better version of what is currently on site. You're gonna have, whether it's 100 vehicles gas guzzling that are gonna throw carbon into the air, or having somebody that's not throwing carbon into the air with a better facade, better landscape, and with tenants we feel comfortable are gonna go in there to expand their offices. I know that's not before you, but I can tell you from what they represented in the past, meaning my clients, that was gonna happen in Griffin Way, happened. I only use that as an example because everything they said was gonna happen did happen. I'm not telling you, take it, that we're gonna do it, but if Rivian did not go there as a prospective tenant, based on this use that's being proposed, it's not like we're gonna have Tesla come in tomorrow, and there's Lucid or another company coming in there. We're limiting this use to that, and that alone.
But when we approved Rivian on Griffin Way, Rivian was here. They came before us with a detailed plan of what they were going to do. We had, lighting plans, we had signage plans, we had all of that. That is absent with this plan, and I can explain that. You have a timeline, I understand.
No, it's not even that. They own the property then. My client owned Griffin Way then, so my client had full control there. My client can't sign a lease without having a zoning to put a tenant there. He doesn't own it. And he certainly wouldn't buy it if he couldn't have the use. So that's why I try to, listen, I'm not trying to shove anything down anybody's and say, we gotta do this today, we gotta do this today. The dilemma is this, is that the way this is being proposed, that if we weren't getting this prospective tenant here, we couldn't do it anyways, because we're cutting our legs off because it's 124, 90% of the spaces are for electric vehicles. That's what we're proposing. So eventually we gotta use a little bit, I'm trying to tell you, common sense wise, if we don't have Rivian there, then you're stuck with what's there now. Because he'd be buying it with the potential that they wouldn't go there, but then we wouldn't have this. So any approval that comes before this board for this use, it wouldn't matter because we wouldn't have that use there. So I can't change somebody's mind, but it's common sense that if we're restricting this for this many vehicles for an electric storage, if they don't go there, we can't do park and fly on the 124. We're never gonna find Tesla or another company coming in there. It'd be gone. If we didn't expect that to happen, we wouldn't be doing all this. I don't wanna waste this board's time. I'm not trying to say, do this, do that. I respect this board. But if my client who already deals with them on a site that he owns and controls and works with them as a developer and is limiting this use for this many spots for this use, if it's not that, then it won't matter because we can't use the 124 spaces for park and fly, for car rental, or for anything.
So, question, you are unwilling or unable to come back next month with a more detailed plan?
Can I add to that? So going back to your original question, you said on Griffin Way we came with detailed plans, right? So that was plans about Rivian taking over an actual building on Griffin Way, right? They were not in Chelsea before. We came to the board to ask permission for Rivian to come into town. And then once they were in, they renovated the building, they fixed the signage and all of that. That was because they needed the building as well as the lot. In this case, so now they're in Chelsea, now that you've allowed them in, they need to expand. In order for them to expand, they want to take this site. So right now, currently, they need the site to park cars, but we are also in talks with them as they're gonna grow, and Gliptal, the current owner that's there, will eventually leave soon, for them to take the building over and also renovate the
You're
building.
asking us to prospectively approve something that we don't have a plan for, that we don't have the necessary information, number one. Number two, as Mr. Allen explained, the way this proposal just, I do not see it providing a benefit to the residents of Chelsea. And, that I might, again, I might be persuaded to put aside if I had definitive plans that I could see right now that I can review to then make a decision to approve or not approve, or to make a recommendation. But the absence of information does not give me, it doesn't, I'm very uncomfortable with that.
That's-
And
You can't-
speaking
you
for
can't do one
myself,
thing.
I just, if tonight I were to be asked to vote yay or nay on making a recommendation, I'm gonna be a no.
On my part, it's enough that it's a parking lot and that the city is recommending against having a parking lot here. That's enough for me to say no,
So can I?
with or without further plans.
So
Yeah,
to-
I think this is, I think that you're telling us an incomplete story. I think if you came to us with a consolidated plan for offices and all the same parking spots, it'll create jobs. This is a totally different conversation. But this is just putting parking in an area that isn't gonna benefit our community at all. And I would encourage you, if possible, to come back with a consolidated plan for that entire plot.
I echo those sentiments. I think this needs to be revisited, and we
I mean,
hope that you're interested in having further conversations about it, but we all need more information.
Or we can't make a recommendation to approve.
My concern is that it looks like no matter, and some members of the board, no matter what, because if it's gonna be parking, it doesn't sound like it's gonna get approved anyways. I mean, so,
But it's parking, it's been parking there for 12 years.
yeah, I think they're comfortable having.
But
I-
that's not the point.
No, I
understand.
think it, no, I think it, they're fine having it, I don't wanna speak for the board, I think they're fine having it for the next 10 years as parking. I think they're more concerned in maybe 10 and 15 years, if somehow it changes and the warehouse shuts down next door, maybe it can be something else, that's the only I can think of. But, I mean, I don't think we want a trucking facility to compete with the abutter next door, that's being built. I don't know, I mean, I don't know what else to say, because you're not
I mean,
gonna.
this might be hard for someone who drives a Rivian to understand, but I mean, we have people who are living in cramped, horrible, apartments, 12 people in an apartment. My son plays at a playground that's right next to the commuter rail, just a fence in between it. This is just our lives. I mean, we want to,
I drive a Rivian because I believe in non-carbon emissions, period. I care more about the environment than probably 95% of the people you're ever gonna meet. All my buildings are non-carbon emissions building. In 3 years, 50% of this board could be driving a Rivian Tesla when they're $30,000 or $10,000. I'd buy a $30,000 Rivian tomorrow. But the problem is they don't make that. And this is not about Rivian, it's more about developing this site. And I can't tell you that, hey, listen, it made sense for the property next door to build a warehouse and to have it as a trucking going back and forth, but that certainly didn't help developing this site as a nicer use down the road. Let's be honest. When you're gonna have that abutting you on one end and the railroad tracks on the other end on a busy street of Eastern Ave, and the zoning is not there in place now, and
Even in the face of all of that, we don't have enough information in this plan to make a decision tonight. I think
if my client it's up to you. If you're fine tabling it, I just get concerned that we're gonna table it, and it sounds like no matter what we do, they're gonna, they don't want what the
No,
use is.
I think we all have to have a further conversation. I mean, there's
I think I'd like to hear
pros
from,
and cons that need to be sorted out.
Yeah, and I take everything everyone says, and I don't consider myself any. I grew up in Everett. My office is in Chelsea. Like, I love Chelsea and Everett better than everybody. Go look at my building. I take pride in it. That's one of the reasons why I was taking pride of seeing what's there now. If you drive by it and look what could be.
We're getting a little off track.
Huh?
I think we're getting a little
Yeah.
off
So,
track. What were you
but
about to say about the plans?
can I ask the board a question? Are you guys against having what we're proposing? Okay, so, and what we're proposing, just so you're clear, is to basically solve an issue that Rivian currently has in Griffin Way. Is for them, they don't have enough storage for their cars, right? So this solves that issue, and it allows them to stay in Chelsea, right? And then further on, if this is allowed, this gives us a gateway to also renovate the building behind it after the current owner, Glipto Painting, that's been there for years. Obviously, the building looks really ugly. So this gives us a gateway, gives us an income from Rivian to renovate that. And we've also talked to Rivian that once Glipto leaves, they could potentially take that building over, right, and use that. So that's the way we're looking at this. If you guys have plans for residential in this area, I like to hear it now, then I'll walk away from the property, right?
No,
So if you, but,
currently isn't zoned for residential.
no, I understand, but
No.
if
But
that's if that's
that
what
can
John likes, or if
change.
the city, if that's what the city likes, right? If that's what the
Well,
city
we
likes to
wanna-
do.
We all have hope for a greater waterfront at some point.
Yeah.
You know, the way Chelsea Creek looks right now is not, you know, we
And honestly, I think that
plan to
killed
see
it when you
some
guys
improvements over
approved.
the years, and we don't necessarily want to
And I 100% agree with you.
parking lots.
Had you
for-
guys approved a butter property, that's 19 acres of waterfront for something different than a warehouse?
But they vastly improved the waterfront. That was.
No, I understand, but
Yeah.
it kind of takes away from the usage of waterfront, because they had the access to waterfront. This building doesn't. A butter property has the frontage of the water.
I think you're losing the point of, I don't really, what the neighbors are doing is different than what you're doing. You have too many ifs. Bring us a lease, then we'll start talking about it.
So,
Because
but-
we
but
could
that's what I'm
approve, I
trying to-
understand you don't want to buy it unless, Rivet isn't going to come near you unless you buy it, unless it gets approved, so it's a catch-22, I understand that. But, and I am sympathetic to that, but that's not, it's too many ifs. If we do this,
So
if we
could
do
it-
that.
Could we have a condition, right, that says, if Rivian is gonna use the property for their electric parking, then we can allow the special permit for them to park cars, if that's what you like to see, because I can't bring you a lease, right, without owning a property, but you can,
I
can you?
understand, but, yeah.
I think there's disagreement amongst the board. I think that we can't give you a firm vote count unless we vote it. I mean,
Yeah, so
I think
could-
some
I
of us
could-
want a plan and
We
some
don't
of
wanna
us want to
waste-
say no.
We don't want to waste anyone's time.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, there's like, whatever goes there is going to be an improvement of what it currently is.
Absolutely.
And we don't want to waste anyone's time, but we're just saying that we can't approve it with what you're currently pitching to us. It seems incomplete, and
Which part of it is incomplete, so we can complete it, whether it's later on or now, which part of it?
so the exact services that Rivian plans to operate out of this location. Because for me, it doesn't seem like it actually, like having it be storage and parking seems a little bit too vague for me personally. I know Rivian, for a luxury vehicle company, provides a lot more services just than that right there.
Right.
Is this some type of concierge service? Like, what kind of services are you actually going to provide at this? I know once people order a car, it gets probably dropped off there, and then you guys drive it to the person's house or whatnot. Like, just more detail regarding that.
so I could add to that. So they need this parking for exactly what you said. So the cars that are coming into
Is
Rivian.
is that in the plan? Is that in the pitch plan that you guys submitted to the city?
So the pitch plan can't describe the operator, right? The plan just tells you what the usage is gonna be. But I, as an operator, can explain, what you're asking. Right, because, when you apply for a special permit, you don't explain the operator how they're gonna operate it. But if you ask me now, I can add to that. So the plan is for Rivian to use this space to park their overflow parking, whether it's for service,
Or
right?
new vehicles?
For new vehicles, correct.
New and used, or just new?
Rivian cars they're all 1 year old right now, this one, so it will be mostly new cars, maybe a few months old cars, to be stored there, whether they're new when they come from the factory, brand new, or if someone drops them off at their location at 25 Griffin Way, which is about a quarter of a mile away, for them to store it there. So that's the plan. Later on, the future plan is, if they get comfortable being in this site, for them to take the building over and renovate the building and stay in the building as well. But the current
The primary use is parking lot.
primary use will be for Rivian to park their cars there,
Okay.
correct?
Yeah, I think you're kind of throwing us off with this future plan thing. I don't want to sign off on something with a potential plan of a fancy office building
And
or
that's
car
totally
dealership.
future plan. I said, it's in the hopes of they could
Yeah.
take that over, but currently, as it stands, so the board is clear, it's for Rivian to park their cars there because they're having an issue at Griffin Way where they don't have enough space. And this site is so close to them that it works, And it would be, you'd be paving the site, obviously, all over. You'd be, doing the drainage, getting all done, and there'll be landscaping there. We can provide that. It's not a problem.
So I think the only way I would probably even consider approving this is to put some kind of time cap, as Sarah said. Oh, was it? That's Sarah? Sorry.
Duration
yes.
to this as a permissible use. Is that what we can do, John? We can put a limit to the approval of this as a
Yes, you can limit the
car
length of
storage.
term of the special permit.
Have you discussed that with them? The possibility, as with other, park and fly sites where they have been term limited for that use? They have to come
Right.
back before the boards to get approval to continue. Has that been discussed with Rivian as a possibility?
What-
Because if we were to put, just, as a hypothetical, if we were to vote tonight to approve a recommendation, but have a condition that there be, let's say, 5-year term limit for this specific use, would they still want to sign a lease?
I think that also would persuade me if even I want to buy the property if that's the condition. So I would probably want to hear that from you guys first, and then I would discuss that with them. But that's a possibility, obviously. They're currently having an issue with storage, and me as an owner of their other site like to solve this issue for them. I don't want them to see leaving Chelsea. Right?
Yeah.
So I would hear that, and then if, discuss it against, obviously, my partner, and then discuss it with Rivian.
The only thing I would ask the board, if there was a condition, if it could be, and if they're gonna issue it without, I don't wanna bring it up and say you do it, but more longer term than 5 years, because I don't expect anything in the next 5 years to go there, but at least probably along a 10-year
It would-
term,
yeah.
just because the amount of money you're gonna spend just to redo the site for Rivian to do the site over would be on a 5-year term. It's not like it's a park and fly, you just drop cars there. This is gonna be something that people are gonna put to their name as a user, so you'd want the site to be redeveloped appropriately, but if you limit it on a smaller term for 5 years, and whatever this board recommends, they recommend, but I'm only say that as an owner of a property, if I spend $3 million and in 5 years I'm only collecting $2 million and they're gone, why would I invest money into redeveloping it on that aspect? That's the only thing I would say is, I'm not telling you 20 years, 15 years, but something that would make sense for them to invest money back onto the site and give it, you know, something that's better than what's there. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Can I add to that? Like, it would have to be for me to make sense to buy the property, and even for Rivian, so, you know, they're a large company, they can't change plans within 2-3 years. It would have to be at least a 10 or 15-year condition.
Thank you.
And with that, I think I'll be okay with it, and I think they'll be okay with it as well.
Yeah, and I also think that gives the city sufficient time to figure out if Rivian is actually planning on
Yeah.
adding offices or improving this plot at all. And if it turns out to be just an empty parking lot, totally unoccupied.
I can tell you that this site will not make sense for us as just a parking lot. I would have to take that building and make a use out of it for it to be worth something. So my plan is to obviously have either Rivian or another company there in the building. It is a large building. It's 39,000 square feet. So it's not it's not a building that could stay empty. And as someone that would buy it, would want to renovate it. So that's my intention. And if you guys can do a 15-year plan, I think that would make sense for me. And as you said, that would give Chelsea, the city of Chelsea, a way to see the future later on the property.
Yeah, 15's kind of far out there, but if the board's amenable to like 5 or 10, I think that's the only way I'd approve it, because the reality of the current situation is that it's a pretty decrepit spot.
100% agree.
And this'll improve it, and I'm into just improve it in the short term while we figure out our zoning. 5 or 10, if the planning board is into putting a time cap on it, 5 years or 10.
I'm not putting a time cap on a lease that they don't have. I'm not doing it. Believe me, I'm the one who really loves these cars, so I am not putting a timetable on a tenant that you don't have for 10 years, so that you can go to another tenant and come back to us. You need more detail. I'm kind of done talking about this. Just because you guys can't figure out the vision of what to do with this building, which we can, doesn't mean that there's not other options for this lot. So I am proposing that we say either you withdraw and come back, or I'm proposing we say no. We've spent 90 minutes on this.
I'd like to make a motion to say
I
no.
want a motion to set a vote up, because
Move the question.
my question is, do you want to withdraw and come back? Or which is a question, or I'm motioning that we deny the application.
I'll withdraw and come back.
We don't have to withdraw, we can just table it.
I'm sorry, table it.
We don't have to withdraw, we can just table it, John, and then talk to the tenant and see if we get updated plans and see if we can get something more definitive that we can amend and file to this board, instead of having to re-advertise it, because really it sounds like really they want to see what's happening with the structure, what's happening on the site, what's happening with the user, what's happening with the operator, landscaping plan, light plan. It's still going to stay on this property, so I don't think we need to be we can still table it and start, essentially, John, we'd have to go to the ZBA anyways. We haven't had the first meeting yet, and we just go back to the planning board for the next time in that month and try to get that all together.
It can be tabled as long as the proposal is the same, otherwise it would have to be re-advertised.
Correct, as far as the use and so forth,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
But
Right.
the use is not gonna change. I think what I'm hearing from this board is, tell me more about what's gonna be there. Show me what it's gonna look like. Signage, landscaping, lighting. What are you gonna do with the building, if anything? Are they potential of doing something with the building? and get something more detailed that's being presented here, and then also talk to them, as you stated, that, how long would you stay here if they did change the zoning, that you'd feel comfortable to do a lease here? I think from what I'm hearing from the board, these are the questions they want answered, and additional plans reflecting that. And show, hey, is this the park and fire section? How are they gonna get in? Where are their entrances, and so forth? How many people they're gonna have? Where's Rivian's gonna be designated? Tell me how it's gonna look, the gate. I think I pretty much got an
Sorry,
idea.
can I stop you? Should we make a move to, a motion then, to table this until next month? Is that the procedural thing to do?
You have two votes on this. One is a recommendation to the ZBA on the special permits, and then the second one is you're voting tonight on the site plan. Now, if, as the councilor suggested, you can't vote to continue your discussion relative to the special permit use until you get information submitted to you, presumably for, if you could do it by April 25th,
Correct.
which is the next meeting.
Can we continue both to the next one?
And I would definitely recommend continuing the site plan because additional information has to be provided. And if you want, I could tell you specifically, it's a signage plan, lighting plan, landscaping plan. I'm sorry, I'm looking for my recommendations here.
So we can move to continue the
Yes.
entire.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to continue this to next month, and, yeah.
So are you tabling?
Both.
Please do two
I
separate
would like
votes.
to make a motion to, first to continue the site plan review to next month.
I'll second that.
Okay,
And you have to tell them what you're looking for on the site plan.
And
So sign plan, lighting plan, landscaping plan, stop lines and stop signs at the entrance, and a scalable plan. There is no scalable plan. I can't, from the information you gave me, I can't measure on there to see how wide that
Yeah, dimension.
frontage is or anything like that. So I need a scalable plan.
I will take care of that.
Okay.
plan to scale.
Yeah, plan to scale.
so.
Okay,
should we
so-
vote?
So that's what we're voting on
That's
now,
the
is
first
to continue
motion.
the site plan.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, who seconded it?
I'll second
Alright.
it again.
Any opposed?
And the second motion is to continue
Recommendation.
the recommendation to the ZBI to next month.
Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, members of the board. Sorry for taking 90 minutes.
So that means you won't be going to the ZBA next month, on April 14th.
Correct. I mean, John, we haven't had,
11th.
we haven't had an initial ZBA presentation yet. 'cause
It
remember,
was canceled because of the
it was
snowstorm.
canceled, So that could be our first presentation. It's almost like starting all over because.
Right, but they won't have the recommendation from the planning board,
but
so
it
they
wouldn't
won't
be- It
vote.
wouldn't be voting. It'd be just initial presentation, just like it's starting from scratch. ZBA, planning, back to ZBA. Because we've never had that initial meeting.
I don't see a problem with
Yeah,
that.
it really.
I will discuss it with the chairman.
Yeah, that's fine. Whatever, I'm only saying that
Yep.
essentially, we haven't had that first step anyways. And then maybe at that point, we could actually talk to the prospective tenant and see if there should be some participation that you've seen in the past on that end. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board.
Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you. Second order of business is case 23, 2023-04 at 227 Marginal Street. The petitioner is Molly Corporation. Good evening.
In the microphone.
You have to, please use the microphone. You have
I
to
can
use
hear.
Use the microphone. But this is being recorded, and in
And
order to record it, it needs to be
broadcast.
microphone. And I sympathize with you. I have the same hearing issue.
That makes three of us.
I don't know, maybe there's a way that the person controlling the sound can lower the volume in the room?
If I
smile, you know I don't hear you. I come tonight to ask permission. I'm looking for a special permit from the ZBA in order to not convert, but to change the occupancy to an airport-related business. The building department, when I went up there, said that because it was airport-related, I needed to get a special permit. Whether or not I agree with that, it's academic at this point, but the building department kicked it back. We discussed it. They issued a certificate of occupancy for the second floor, which are the offices. The issue came in on the first floor. My company occupied about 2,000 square feet for the last 20 years since I owned the building to keep some equipment, and we had a repair shop for refrigeration where we reconditioned certain items. I think that's what precipitated the rejection of the building, the occupancy. I hope I'm not being too confusing, but they said I have to get a new certificate of occupancy by way of a special permit through the ZBA. And that's basically why I'm here.
What is the current use? The building's currently being used for what purpose?
Right now, the building is empty.
Okay.
The second and third floor was occupied by a group of an office space, the Cowan Group, which built a hotel at the corner, and they had their architectural offices and their business offices. 3 years ago, when COVID hit, before then, they decided they wanted to move to Somerville. So it's been empty. The first floor was occupied by Green Roots.
Okay, I was just gonna say, this is where Green Roots
It was occupied by
Okay.
Green Roots, and I occupied the other part of the first floor. So when Green Roots left, I was looking for a tenant that would kind of check all the boxes, because keep in mind that Cabot site is a pretty, I don't like to use the word, it's a unique site. So it needs the right tenant that, won't be problematic. So Textron, they have a service vehicle operation at Logan Airport. They only service JetBlue.
Okay.
They have one client. They run 3 shifts a day. They've asked to move their offices and their service department into my building.
So they would take over the whole building?
Yes, the second and third floor will be strictly offices. The first floor will be a parts department, some offices, and a home base for their service crews. They have 3 crews, again, that work 8 hours a day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay, because the information we have is it would be for storage of airplane parts?
Well, they're not airplane parts. Textron is a franchisee of a company called TUG, T-U-G-G. TUG is when you go on an airplane, there's a little, it looks like a forklift that pushes the plane out.
Yep.
That's all they do. They just maintain those vehicles. So they're at the airport all the time, taking care of tugs. There's no big equipment. There's no, I know on your agenda it mentioned the storage of airplane
parts.
There's no storage. It's strictly, the only vehicles that will be there will be the employees, and I would imagine at some point they have 3, I've seen the service trucks, they're pickups, and the servicemen take those to the airport and then they come back. So basically, that's my story.
Thank you.
Are you making changes changes to the building, or is it going to be existing to remain?
I'm sorry?
Are you modifying the
There's
building
no
itself?
construction, there's no, there will be no change to the facility. We're doing nothing like that. They're taking it as is. And as I said, there is one penetration where I occupy, which is 8 by 8, which is, I call it my garage, where we do keep a snow plow, a small bobcat, something, but it's basically a parts depot and offices, period.
Questions?
What is the duration of this lease? Is this a
I'm
tenant?
sorry?
How long will this tenant, do you expect they'll sign a 10-year lease, 20-year lease?
Well, they signed the lease. I didn't anticipate a problem until I went to the building department. You guys don't have you have to, when you go for the special permit, I always thought you just go for a certificate of occupancy, but again, because zoning changed, now it's under the building department.
So, but the lease that they signed was for what term, how much time? How many years, or was it 1 year, 2 years?
No, it's a 3-year, and they have a 3-year option. I didn't want to tie it up too long, but I did want to get a good tenant.
Okay. Do you know how many employees they will have? Approximately?
I asked them that. They have 8 servicemen now on each shift, so there's a total of about 24 or 30 service people in the office. I think we said there were about 8 or 10. The office space is more excessive than they need, but hopefully they have a couple of other operations in Chelsea. I think there's a branch. They're a huge company. They're $1 billion company. So the office space is on the upper floors is much bigger, and I'm hoping that I'm not hoping, I mean, they can do whatever they want with it, but I think their intention is to bring some bookkeeping departments over there. It's a beautiful space.
Yeah. Great views.
On my part, it would be, before I ask any further questions, I'd like to hear from the city perspective, if what the city is recommending on this, and if there's any public comment or comments from other folks in the audience.
City's recommended approval.
Thank you.
And this is both a recommendation and a site plan, so this does get open to the public.
I'd like him to make a motion to.
Well, he needs to ask if there's anybody in the public.
Oh, I thought he just did. Sorry.
Do we need to ask if there's anybody in the audience?
Okay.
Do you have to do that?
Does anybody want to see some pictures of this space?
I got it up. I have it up on the screen.
Yeah, right there.
Right behind you, sir.
Oh, that's good.
These are
The hard
pictures
copy.
of the existing office space, because it's very nice space. It's very nice space. And I think this is what,
Oh, and that's where,
this 1,250 square feet is what kicked in the problem, I believe. This will be their parts department, and this is gonna be offices for the parts people.
Just to confirm, the only reason that this case is in front of us is because the business is gonna be associated with the airport, or is there something else?
Yeah, this site is also in the airport-related overlay district, and the proposed use is for the airport, so it needs a special permit under our airport-related overlay district.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Allen, do you want to address the board on this issue? You're the only member of the general public that I can see.
Please go through the motions.
Motion to approve with the conditions that are on, the standard conditions as applicable, and that no vehicles are to be stored in the building.
I'll
I was-
second it.
I'll second that.
And what are we doing, site plan or
I recommend to,
recommendation?
To approve. That was the first, you said to
with
recommend to approve.
conditions, which means I'm recommending the
Okay.
site plan.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried.
First motion on the site plan. I'll make a motion to recommend approval, recommend that ZBA approve.
Great.
Second.
This the site plan?
No, she did site
You
plan
did the site plan.
with the usual, with the standard conditions as applicable
Yeah.
and no vehicle storage.
I would put the no vehicle storage in the special permit recommendation, not the site plan.
Okay, sorry.
And was it seconded?
So I made the motion to approve the recommendation
For the special permit?
for the special permit.
All right.
Second.
And Sarah seconded.
And she seconded, okay. And now, is there a motion to,
The motion to approve the site plan has already been seconded, approved, and voted on.
I think we vote
Now,
To
yeah,
get
the motion to approve the permit has been, a motion was made and seconded, now you do the vote to approve it
this is for the special permit?
for the special permit.
Okay, that's what I was trying to
Yep.
determine. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion is carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
And for waiting.
So, see you back here on April 11th.
Sir?
See you back here on April 11th.
Easy, If I could speak with Peabody and Stearns, who are one of Boston's most prestigious architectural firms, and principally famous for their grand cottages along the coast of Maine and southern New Hampshire. I would speak with them about the acoustics in this room because nobody can hear anything, particularly us old. The final case before the board is the board is 2023-5 at 440 Broadway, Causeway Development, LLC. Thanks for waiting around.
No problem. Thank you
I'm
for
sure
having me,
found
everybody.
it deeply fascinating.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Dan Hubbard. I'm with Causeway Development. I'm here with architect Andres and our attorney. My partner and I, Dave Tregorth, have developed a fair amount of affordable housing in Chelsea. We're just about to finish up our 1005 Broadway project on the Revere border. Hopefully have occupants in April. It's been a long time coming, and we're excited to get that one going. But I'm here to talk about 440 Broadway. John has a presentation. I'll try not to take too much of your time. But 440 Broadway is the Salvation Army site, if you're unfamiliar with it. This is it here with our new rendering. So we are proposing this 5-story building here. Go to the next slide. Just a reminder of the location of the site, very nearby to here. If anybody is unfamiliar, I can go into more detail, but I imagine you're familiar with it. Currently vacant had been the Salvation Army. The city of Chelsea took it via eminent domain, and we can get into the path that we've come to get here. We can go to the next slide. So just a couple more current pictures of the front and back. So the front along Broadway, the rear along Cherry Street. There's a slight grade that comes down. You can kind of see where the window headers are. In the back is where you would think the floor is for the first floor up on Broadway. So about a 3 or 4 foot step back down to there. And we'll go to the next slide. It's just some existing conditions on the inside and the side that faces out towards the parking on Luther Place. We can go to the next slide. So our goals for this project, it is planned to be 100% affordable home ownership. That is our primary goal. We want to also establish a great storefront and retail use on the ground floor. And we have thought a lot about actually the back of the building as well, and trying to create an interesting backdrop and eyes on the street for Luther Place. There's a lot of interesting things going on back there, and we think we can be, helpful and part of it. Next slide. So just quickly, you all are probably very familiar with this, but the demand for affordable housing in Chelsea is extreme. We, at the project I just mentioned, 1005 Broadway, it's 38 low-income housing tax credit units. We received 3,000 applications for them. Currently, half of Chelsea households are rent burdened. The home ownership rate is only 27%. So, what we see broadly is a big need for affordable housing of all types. Down farther on Broadway, deeper income affordability for folks making under 30% AMI and under 60% AMI. Here we're thinking 28 home ownership units for groups making 80% and 100% AMI, so a higher level income group for this, and we think that combination is something that we need more of in Chelsea, as much affordability in as many ranges as possible. And our plan is to ask the state, who is funding quite a bit of this project, to allow the maximum allowable preference for Chelsea residents, which is usually a 70% preference. So it's not something we can determine on our own, but we generally get a yes. And we've always gotten a yes, so we will ask for it and try to make this housing for Chelsea residents as much as possible. Next slide. So just a little history on the project. 2019, a previous version of this project brought to you by the City of Chelsea got special permanent and variance approvals. I'll show you a picture of that project in a second. In 2021, a request for proposals was put out by the City of Chelsea. We submitted our response, had a public meeting in the summer of 21, and were approved by the City Council by the end of 2021. We worked during 2022 with the city to execute an LDA, a land disposition agreement, that covers our ability to take site control and includes some limitations on exactly what we're allowed to build there. And so now we've submitted our applications to you in the ZBA and hope to get our approvals in the near future. And then from there, we are hoping to be able to push design forward, lined up financing, and hopeful that we could break ground by the end of the year, which would be a good case scenario. It's possible it would go into the next year, but we're definitely trying to get this started within the next 12 months. Next slide. So previously, this was the 2019 project that was approved. It's about the same height as ours, but it's 16 units. It only had 8 parking spaces, so 0.5 spaces per unit, and just under 1,000 square feet of retail. And that project got the relief listed there. We can go to the next slide. So we took this general idea and tried to do something similar, but we have 28 affordable condos here. We're trying to really try to tackle some affordable housing needs. We've increased the commercial space. We thought 900 square feet wasn't good enough there. It's a 5,000, 6,000 foot footprint of the building, so there was easily space. So we have 4,900 square feet of commercial space there. The building is 5 stories along Broadway. We have parking coming in from the back that is going into what is now effectively the basement, so it'll ramp down from Cherry Street down into the basement, and we've maximized parking that we could possibly get on that level, which is 19 spaces. We're proposing to have some public art and mural space along Luther's Place, and we are hoping to cover the roof in solar and try to make this as green of a building as possible. Also go after a passive house certification, which is something that we're doing down the street at 1005 Broadway. Limit energy use as much as possible here, which would be great for both the environment and for the future owners of these condominiums not having to pay giant utility bills. We can go to the next slide. So we've just listed the relief that we're requesting through the variance. We have the minimum rear yard setback. We are really building, the building right now goes all the way to the property line. We're planning to keep that. The usable open space, we do have some deck space here, but again, we're taking up most of the property. We do see this as, you know, a downtown building that has access to parks, and that is more or less where we see, you know, the open space being a piece of the community. You know, the only other option we had was really to think about a roof deck. We have decided to go the solar route. Those two things don't coexist nicely. So, and then for parking, we, as I said, 19 spaces, 0.67 per unit. So an improvement on what was previously approved there. And loading, we don't have any loading space on this project. And I think we can go to the next slides, and Andres can take us through the design quickly.
Next slide, please. I'm going to take you through this real quickly. This is the civil plan. We have Broadway at the bottom of the screen, Cherry Street at the top. We're looking at just services. The site itself is about 8,100 square feet. And you know, we're looking to get water from Broadway and then possibly power back in Cherry Street. Next slide, please. This is the floor plan for this is the first floor plan, so this is where you would be entering from Broadway. You see some doors to the left. That would be for the commercial space. Like Dan said, it's about 4,900 square feet. And then the doors to the right, and that would be the residential lobby. You would come in, you have your mail area, but it's pretty small lobby, and then essentially you would have your 2 means of egress and an elevator. So this is an elevator building serving all 5 stories. And then there is the second means of egress sort of snakes through the back. It needs, you know, we need to make sure that we have that egress. So it's going to the back towards Cherry Street. And yeah, next slide. That's good. Now we're going down to the basement. This is a little bit. This is about 4 feet lower or 6 feet lower than Cherry Street. So we needed to add a speed ramp, and that took a little bit of sort of finagling with the plans to make sure that they all worked. But what you see here is a speed ramp that goes down, drops you down at sort of in the middle of this space. The elevator still goes down to the basement. We have one stair that goes all the way down to the basement, and then we have 19 spaces. Out of those 19 spaces, 10 are full-size parking spaces and 9 are compact spaces. And we also have our required accessible spaces that are close to the elevator and the stair. And last but not least, we have some space for bike parking in the basement. Next slide, please. Now I'm gonna take you to the second floor, and then second floor to the fifth floor are pretty much very similar. Some changes, but what we have at each floor, we have 7 units. And we have our 2 means of egress and our elevator. As you see, the elevator is sort of between the stairs, by the way, and it's the X in between the stairs. And only in the second floor, we're trying to take opportunity of having a roof right down below, where we're using roof decks. But that's the only place where we find a good opportunity for them. Other than that, I think we keep the footprint of the building the way we're showing it there. In order for us to have windows for these units, we had to push in the footprint at 2 locations, and that's what you would see going all the way up. So if you can have the next slide, please. So this is essentially what you would see. The darker line is the property line, and then you see how we step back into locations to allow for windows and following code regulations. Next slide, please. Now we're on the 4th floor, I believe, so we can keep going. The main difference that you would see as you sort of go up on the building is that on the side on Broadway, we're carving out a little bit of the building to just articulate the facade and make it more interesting. So we're taking a little bit of square footage. So it's more interesting than just a block. Next slide, please. And then the roof, we're mostly a flat roof, and we're allotting a good amount of space for solar, and we have to stay away from the edges, but it's a flat roof with access also from a stair access to the roof. Next slide, please. What we have here is the elevations. The top drawing is the elevation from Broadway. You see to the right is the residential entry. It has a little bit of a different character. To the left, the 2 storefronts to the left are the commercial storefronts. And then from that point up, we have just essentially residential windows that are punched. We're using brick and likely metal panel to articulate the top and break down the volume of the building along Broadway. The image to the bottom, that is the Cherry, sorry, no, that's not Cherry Street, that is the side elevation. So you would be, essentially what you see from Luther Place, you see we're actually taking cues from the existing mural, and we're thinking that we can do something along those lines, and we're taking some of that idea of the arch and bringing it into the architecture to express that possible art. Next slide, please. Top drawing, that's the Cherry Street elevation. You see that, again, the arch trying to emulate the idea of a mural. And then to the left, you see a door that would be the garage door for the ramp, for the speed ramp, and then currently it's just a one-man door for the egress, and the second means of egress for the residents. And then at the bottom is the other elevation where most of their core is actually going to be located. It's a 0 lot line building. In this case, we don't have a lot of opportunity to have windows because of fire issues. But we do find one place, and you see a line of 4 windows where we added windows, and that's right now it's a common area where we think residents can sort of spend some time outside of their units. And next slide. This is a cross-section building section. What you see to your right, and that's Broadway. on the left is Cherry Street. The building's about, on Broadway Street, I believe it's about 58 feet. And as you can see that the great difference between Broadway, you can see the great difference between Broadway and Cherry, and the need for us to add the speed ramp, and how where the garage is roughly about 6 feet below Cherry Street. And we're intending to keep that same elevation of the garage, mostly for structural reasons with adjacent buildings. Next slide, please. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, I got a couple of questions. One, why only one elevator? It's a lot of floors. It's going to be slow. That's one question. And the other question is, have you guys, 4,900 square feet is a lot of retail. Have you thought about pushing back the window to make a courtyard on the street of Broadway? So that if you put a daycare or a restaurant, they would have someplace sort of more, you could put, obviously you can't grow plants because it's still going to have a roof. I assume that's a 10-foot ceiling that's on the first floor?
It's 14 feet. It's
Even
little-
higher?
yeah.
That's even better. So you could have a really nice courtyard. You could also, but 4,900 square feet is a lot to rent. And the way it's designed, it would be since you only have two windows, it's going to be very hard to get a tenant in there. You're talking, two tenants, you're talking 2,500 square feet. That's, but I was thinking if you just got rid of it and moved the glass to the back so that people would have to walk into the building, would make it a little bit, I realize design is not really our forte here, but I think, but the elevator is one of my things that and also trash. Where is the trash?
Okay, I'll start.
DPW, who doesn't love them? We all do.
I'll start with the elevator. I think roughly at 7 units per floor, on one elevator, it should be more than enough. And we're dealing with a tight footprint and not many units, so it's hard to support 2 elevators with that tight of footprint. That's what we typically see in buildings. I understand that the thought of what happens if one elevator goes down.
I wasn't thinking that.
There's that thought, but that's what we typically see in most buildings at this scale. In terms of the storefront on Broadway, along Broadway, most of the storefronts are essentially right at the street, right? So the street wall, as we call it, it's very consistent, and we felt that it was very important for us to continue that street wall, and not really sort of change it up.
But if you push it back 1,000 to 1,500 square feet, you could put planters in front of it, so you could introduce more greenery onto the street except for the trees. You could have possibly a brick patio or whatever, or concrete. I'm a big fan of concrete. I think you could do, because one idea that I think that would be very useful in there is a daycare center. So you would be a nice place for children to be able to play in inclement weather, because it would be covered, so they could, you could put a fountain in it. And also you could make it protective, so you could even put gates so that people wouldn't be able to vandalize it. But my concern is that 4,900 square feet in Chelsea on Broadway is going to stay vacant for a very long time. That's a lot to rent. Even in, I have a business in Cambridge and I have 2 stores, and so that's a big storefront. And you only have 2 windows, so you're going to try to divide it in half, and you have this building in the back, so it's kind of an ideal place to put a restaurant if you put it in the back. People love to dine outside. They just love it. So, I just think it would bring more life to the street in Chelsea, and it would do a lot of different things if you pushed it back. And you could also push the entrance to it would still leave the apartment. It would make the apartment or the apartment entrance very distinctive.
Well, yeah, I mean, you see that the apartment entrance
Right.
actually is pushed back, and we were trying to make that difference. I think we try really hard to make sure that it's clear for everyone where the residential entry is and where the commercial, so you don't have, folks trying to go in the wrong door. In terms of the space, I have to say, yeah, I have envisioned a restaurant there. I think it seems like a great opportunity because it has that connection also to the third place where you could actually see openings to the back. And with restaurants, in our experience, the space goes really quickly. We go almost 50% is back of house.
Except you're gonna have to put a vent to go all the way up.
Yes, yeah, no, I'm very well aware, yes.
Right, so you're gonna have to put a vent, you're gonna put ACC. And building a 5,000 square foot restaurant, you're talking about over a 100-seat restaurant, won't be supported in Chelsea.
Well, yeah, I think, so usually when we see restaurants, is 50% of it just goes to the back of the house. So meaning like just the support for it. So the restaurant gets very quickly, gets really small. I mean, right now we see an empty space, but when we start putting all the infrastructure requirements, then I'm sort of on the other side, sort of saying I need a little bit more space, and also the issues that we're going to have in terms of getting movement in the back and so forth. So there is, from my perspective, looking into the future, it's actually not a lot of space at the end of the day, but
It's a lot of space for a restaurant, but okay, it's just an idea.
And where will the trash be stored?
Yeah.
So I can take that one. So you may be aware, you might not, we also own the building 466 Broadway, which is 2 doors down. It's where the McDonald's is.
I'm sorry, it's which building?
It's where the McDonald's is,
Okay.
2 doors,
Yep.
you can see it there.
Yep.
2 buildings down. Currently, right now, that building's trash is handled on a little separate parcel on Cherry Street. Our proposal here is to improve that parcel significantly. Right now, it's just a chain link fence. We took over that building a few years ago, been working to make it better. What we'd like to do is use this opportunity to fix that up, make it more secure, and have a more sizable dumpster there and be able to use that for both buildings. We think that's an opportunity for trash to be picked up more quickly as trucks go into the back, be able to pull it out. It's not an extra stop for anybody. And we think, right now, frankly, we don't love what we have at 466 for the trash enclosure, but it's an all affordable building. We don't have a ton of money to fix it up. This would give us the funding to spend, $100,000 to fix up that space, make it much nicer, and not necessarily change much about what happens back there.
Yep. So it'll be 7 apartments on each floor. What is the breakdown of 3-bedroom, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and what's the square footage for each?
Good question. So we have a total of 12 ones, 12 twos, and 4 threes. I have here that the ones are just under 700 square feet. The twos are just under 850 square feet, and the 3 bedrooms are about 1,100 square feet. And half of those, each evenly by bedroom, will be affordable to households at 80% AMI, and half at 100% AMI. So 2 bedrooms in each group, 6 twos and 6 ones in each group.
Okay, thank you.
Out of curiosity, why wasn't the project in 2018 able to proceed?
That project was permitted by the city. I think
That was, just before COVID, I think it was, we approved the city's concept, like a pre-permitting.
Yeah.
That they then used that approval to put the bid out to developers.
Okay.
exactly. It gave us a good idea of what could go there, what the city was interested in generally, looking like at that site. And so we have, it's certainly different, but we've, kind of kept the concept of the same size massing, and it gave think it was a good idea. It gave us as a developer, you know, a good idea that that kind of project was supportable here.
Thanks.
Now's as good time as any to bring up the Historical Commission. This is in the Historical District. I did bring this to the Historical Commission earlier this month. They were not thrilled with the design of it. They feel that it could represent more of what the district has in it now, particularly those buildings across the street from it as opposed to the buildings on each side of it. Particularly on left side, it's all one stories and it doesn't really relate to this site. And they're not necessarily looking for that one story to relate to the site and vice versa. What they're really looking for is to relate to, take some of the features of the buildings across the street. They really want it to, hold the sign, the line of signs across here, hold the window levels, and they ask why you didn't go with the red brick, which is a predominant brick that's being used in the district. They understand that this is a new construction and a historic construction. You're not necessarily looking for a building that looks exactly like the historic buildings, but they want to at least take some more of the features of the historic buildings. Mm-hmm. And they are highly recommending design review as a condition.
I'm sorry, on the brick, what was the comment, the color?
Yeah.
They liked the color, they didn't?
They did not like the color.
They didn't like the color. They wanted redder, okay.
Yep.
That's that's easily changed. It's probably, sometimes the renderings actually don't help us because we do it in a computer and it looks a little bit different here, but, and I think those 2 points are actually well taken. We can take, we were trying to take cues from the storefronts, but we could probably work with them and either expand them or make sure that the lines are aligning and make sure that they sort of feel more contextual in that way. But also kind of give them a little bit of a fresh look, so it's a contemporary building that should look that way.
I think they definitely understood what you're trying to accomplish here, and they understood why you went for the darker, to sort of, on the roof, to sort of define the height and hold this more as the height than the entire building. And they definitely supported the use, so.
Can we ask if there are folks in the public who would like to speak?
Carl Allen, City of Chelsea, Economic Development Planner. So this has been a long time coming. I've been here long enough to remember going into the old Salvation Army, and it's a good thing it's gone. This is the cornerstone of the city's efforts to reimagine and redevelop Broadway. We view this as a catalyst for additional projects that we hope to see up and down Lower Broadway. One of our objectives is to significantly increase residential density on Broadway, and this is our pilot of that concept. And I'll stay out of the design ideas too. I thought the old one looked better than this one, but that's just me. First floor retail will be a challenge, particularly because they're retail condos, and we're gonna have to find buyers for them. But we need more retail space, and we are very supportive of business owners owning their retail space. So this is an opportunity for someone who's currently renting on Broadway to come into possession of their own space. I think it's going to be a great project, and we're hopeful that they will break ground this year. What else can I say? City Council had lots of its own ideas, and all of those are captured in the land disposition agreement that the project needs to comply with, and the city urges you to approve it with all due haste. Thank you.
The board will see that I presented you with a report. It was sent to the applicant. The applicant addressed all the issues I had in there, as well as the fire department and DPW comments. They agreed to address those concerns as well.
I guess my only concern, because I really like the project, is trash. It's really hard for a tenant with a bag to walk in, if it's raining or something, you're gonna generate and particularly if you have a restaurant, you're gonna generate a lot of trash. And having it off-site, even a couple of thousand feet, is still, I don't know I don't know how to solve the problem, but, I think you don't have to worry about snow removal, because that's inconsequential, but I think the trash is gonna be difficult, and I worry that somebody is just gonna dump it somewhere.
Understandable. Trash is a challenge at every property that we control, and we try to work on it. I will say this, despite the fact that this lot is related to 466 Broadway, it's actually directly behind this building, and we have, John, I don't know if we can go back to the first floor plan, but we have developed not just for this reason, we needed two means of egress, but there's a hallway from the elevator back to the back of the building, and it's literally just across Cherry Street from there. So it is as close as we can make it outdoors, but your point is taken.
Will the developer be the property manager, or will you be hiring another agency to handle property management?
We do not do any of our own property management, so we will hire a third-party property manager. We will be, the initial declarant of the condo. We will hire who we think will be great. Then the future owners will be able to fire them and hire somebody else at their will, or hold on to them. But it will be, somebody with extensive condo experience and extensive experience with affordable condos, which do come with their own budgeting challenges, and making sure that we, it's not a population that can easily come up with, $5,000 to fix something if things aren't budgeted properly. So take careful care to make sure we find the right group for that.
Also, just to make sure that the access to the back is also accessible. We needed to make it accessible, so there's the corridors ramping down to make sure that everyone coming out on the first floor would be able to come to Cherry Street without the need of going through.
I'm going to ask a very technical question. Are there any floor drains on those things?
Are there any what?
Floor drains where?
In that hallway, so you can hose it down? Water? In case it leaks, those bags are going to leak. Trust me, they're going to leak.
We can look into that. That's
I know.
at this
I
point
love
it's
floor drains. I know they're very expensive to put in. My big pet peeve with buildings. Again, it's not part of this purview in the building. I was just there's nothing like a floor drain. So.
It's easier to clean, yes.
But I love the project.
Okay, so.
And I like the color of the brick.
I will say we did go back and forth between various colors of brick,
Well, no,
but we can continue doing that
the
with.
gold reminded me of the police department building, which I like.
What?
The gold brick, the
No, I understand why the
police
Historic
department.
Commission wanted to change it. I get it.
As a result of the changes at the applicant made, it needs fewer permits. The top one here lists 2 variances and 5 special permits. However, as revised, it now only requires 2 variances and 2 special permits.
I'll make a oh. The question was, how are you allocating the parking spaces?
Yep, that is a good question. So, you know, obviously we have 9 fewer parking spaces than units. We will be going through an extensive affirmative fair housing marketing plan. Generally how these work is we'll end up getting, you know, it's less than a rental building, but we'll get, you know, 500 to 1,000 applicants for these units. And we start there. They get ordered through a lottery. They're able to then, you know, top of the lottery gets to select their first unit. And generally how we have done it in the past, although I can't say I've figured this out all the way yet on this project, but I'm sure we'll do it the same way, is that the lottery also applies to parking. So if residents at the top of the lottery need a parking space, they're able to get one. And if we get through 19 parking spaces in, you know, fewer than 28 units, then it's just the lottery is what has determined who's able to get it. We have seen at, you know, a lot of our other affordable housing developments that this is probably about right, we think, for the number of spaces needed for this building. So we are hopeful that it will be the right amount, but, you know, the lottery is ultimately how we would sort it out if there was more demand than we had.
I make a motion to recommend approval to the ZBA.
I'll second that.
With
With the standard conditions and
Recommendation for permit, for, special or site plan, or both.
she said the special permit and then variances to recommend ZBA approve.
Everybody hear the motion?
With
All in
these
favor?
conditions?
With the conditions
with the
that John
conditions.
has
Oh,
outlined.
sorry,
The conditions are standard conditions as applicable, design review. Residents are not eligible to participate in the resident sticker parking program, and said prohibition is to be included in all rental documents, and all, well, in this case, condo documents.
Sorry, what was the last one, John?
Pardon?
What was the last one after parking?
Residents are not eligible to participate in the on-street parking program because you need parking relief.
Yeah, and then the next one. Sorry, that's the one I
And
forgot.
include that in the condo documents, clearly in the condo documents.
Gotcha.
No rental, lease, sublease, or other rental period of less than 12 months, and that also clearly included in the condo documents.
Yep, agreed.
Okay. You will also be required to make a payment into the Community Improvement Trust Fund, assuming that this is approved before the council eliminates that section. Otherwise, you'll be subject to the linkage fee.
Okay.
Unless arrangements were made in a land disposition agreement, I have no idea.
So she made the motion.
Yeah,
Jessica?
we started to vote.
Aye.
Okay, aye. Motion is unanimous. Lee carried it.
To recommend the approvals. I will make a motion to approve the site plan
With applicable standard conditions?
with all applicable standard conditions, taking into account the recommendations, the requests made by the Historical Commission.
Second?
I'll second that.
Made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed.
Thank you very much.
See you April 11th.
For
Yeah.
ZBA. Yep. Thank you.
You have one other item on the agenda, and that's a discussion relative to number of marijuana.
Dispensaries.
And I am highly recommending that you do not have that discussion, that you wait until, I know this discussion was relative to a proposal being put by the council, but you have nothing before you to speak on. I suggest that you wait until you receive that material. I don't want I'm suggesting that you don't have a discussion that may be prejudicial toward applications that may come in the future.
In other words, somebody could come back and say, the planning board already made a decision on that way back when, and so they were predetermined to oppose our fill in the blank. Now,
That makes sense.
the board can have the discussion anyway, right? And I'm certainly prepared to have it now or to wait until the city council it gives us something to bite upon. So it's really up to you people whether you would like.
So, is there going to be a review period in which we're able to respond, or is it just going to occur out of the blue?
No.
That's not certain.
My understanding is that the proposal is currently being scheduled for a subcommittee meeting. Once it is reported out of that subcommittee meeting, the council will vote to send it to you, assuming that they support it and that it goes forward. They will vote to accept it and send it to you, to this board, for a public hearing.
I work
But
for
that's not
lawyers,
guaranteed.
and I've learned, in the 16 years I've been working with lawyers, is you don't go on the record with anything until you have something tangible to discuss.
Okay.
So that's where I stand. I agree with John that we should wait until such time that City Council forwards a proposal to us for review.
Makes sense to me.
I agree with that. I agree.
Works with me too. Thanks for the tip.
Okay.
One other item, I did give you a draft of next month's, and I left under other business, a planning board discussion, and I just want to make sure you still want that and what you want that to be.
Sorry, is that a question?
Yeah.
I would still like to have that. Can we have it at our next meeting?
But what
A
do we
what?
want to discuss?
Oh,
Of another
can,
planning board discussion, what should this topic be?
I think the topic, we had previously talked about asking Alex Train
Yes.
to come to discuss how planning board decisions may or, like, how the city overall vision and plan relates to the things that come in front of the planning board, and how we can take those into account, or, just have more knowledge of them.
And Alex has agreed to attend next month.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a good idea.
Work?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now you need a motion
Make a motion to adjourn?
I will second the motion to adjourn.
All right, who made the motion?
Second,
Sarah did.
all in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.